Loners Stay Together, an original mystery by Robert Napier, Chapter 7. Mark Shutter stayed in town. Folks just call him Shutter. The name is a holdover of German immigrants. Technically, it should be pronounced like Shooter, but in this province, folks say it like Shutter, and he didn't know any different. He was both a townie and a college boy, making his way on a basketball scholarship thanks to his 6'5" frame and athletic disposition. He planned to quit the team, though, to pursue psychology and do tests on people, and covertly to understand why his father beat the piss out of him on the regular, and his mother never said a damn word. Seemed like a missed opportunity, though, as a pro basketball player named Shooter writes its own press. He worked nights at the local supermarket, stocking produce, making sure the potatoes were covered, and there was cut fruit in plastic containers. He lived alone in a rent-controlled studio apartment on the west side of town, one of those where the bed folds into the wall. He never had problems getting a girl's attention, but could never keep them around. I wouldn't call his lifestyle minimal, just barren. Nothing on the walls, nothing on the floors, sparse furniture, never more than a day's worth of food in the pantry. He was obsessive about calisthenics. Despite his height and broad shoulders, there is something feminine about him. He only speaks in a whisper, and his eyes are easily distracted. The night my brother died, about the time I was rolling into town, Shutter was on the kitchenette floor beside the folding card table. He repeats, "Loner, loner." Between sit-ups, I know that name. In his mind, Mark replays his last night at the dream house, over a year ago now. It's something he would later describe to me in vivid detail while corresponding from prison. I have to admit, his experience and insight were instrumental to writing this book. The last night at the dream house, according to Shutter, Roman's hot rod fishtailed right up to the front door, and the van was following so close it had to swerve. Shutter instantly recognized the car, even though it had been months since Roman visited the dream house. Loner. Shutter turns from the door. In his haste, he drops a scalpel that is probably still there, never collected for evidence or responsibly disposed of. He had been carving the group's unofficial sigil into the grayed-out picnic table next to the doorway, and what appeared to be a dark man figure of some kind. The structure itself was well built before the money ran out. It would have been a lovely home if someone loved it. Instead, it was a gutted shell with only dumpster tables and curbside couches moldering in its common areas. It was divided by plastic drop sheets that had tattered over time, as all the windows were broken. Besides the dormitory, it serves no domestic function. By now, even the microwave was disgusting and disused. Shutter's long stride quickly traversed the gloomy and haphazard rooms. He caught glimpses between flutters of hanging plastic of the dismal conditions. The few students who remained were either on academic probation or already expelled. Not that they would notice unless they could smoke, snort, or inject the dean's disapproval. The walls were painted with layers of graffiti. The oldest strata were bubbly and vibrant, but overpowered by the later dreary frescoes of collapsing cities and silhouettes wailing in monstrous clutches, an expression of the helplessness of those that remained. Soon the walls were totally black, smeared more than painted, by any spreadable fluid. No matter what color was scavenged or stolen, it inevitably gave way to blackness as it accumulated. Near the heart of the dream house, only children's nightlights, powered by a generator, lit the oppressive corridors. In the center was a kind of meditation chamber, where the students gathered to listen to their doctor's latest epiphany and receive the sacrament. They called him Deacon. There's no way to know how many people passed through the dream house on a weekend adventure, a dare, or as a participant. But by this time, 8 young men and women had taken residence in its apocalyptic walls. They sat on the floor in a circle around their prophet, like a preschool class at story time. "Doctor," whispers Shutter, stooping apologetically for being taller. Deacon was 6'3" and built. He had lost weight in the last year, but it was only fat, leaving him lean and imposing. His jet black hair had grown to shoulder length and his eyes had visibly sunken in their sockets. But he had a buttery voice tinged by a cosmopolitan accent that made every utterance an ineffable mystery. Students that had attended his regular lectures admitted to being more enthralled by his voice than his message. His students are between 19 and 23. We will get to know some of them soon enough. Shutter's only friend worth mentioning is Guy Wallach. He's younger, shorter, and less bright. He sits against the bathroom floor trying to sew himself up after a barroom fight. It wasn't even a good fight, he just slipped and cut his forearm on some stupid glass. Guy is 24 now, but looks younger thanks to his bleached hair, numerous piercings, and anime t-shirts. He has no registered address, so it's likely he's homeless, or spends his nights at Shutter's when he's out covering the potatoes. Wallach bites the thread of his makeshift stitches and says, "I know Loner. Saw it on TV." He pokes the red flesh and sighs with pleasure. "I was in his class once. Some kid had a complete mental breakdown, and he saved the fuckhead's life." Shutter has known Guy Wallach since elementary school. He doubts that he ever attended a lecture in his life. But he doesn't call him out. They're friends. Loner's not a doctor. No, he's just into this psycho mind shit, like you. There's a silence while Shutter flexes in the window reflection. I warned him. Wallach thinks for a moment that Shutter has just confessed to shooting the professor, but he shakes it off as unlikely. About what? Another silence. We've waited too long to have the cops screwing around. What do you mean? Who? Shutter put on his shirt and laughed while typing a text on his phone and mashing the send button. You didn't think it was just you and me? A lot of people worshipped Deacon. They haven't forgotten his promise. What promise, man? About what? About death. Wallach was getting annoyed now. He never bought into all this blah blah dick sucker shit. He just wanted the pills. What about death? Shutter pulled the bed down from the wall and laid himself gently on it, on his side with his hands tucked under his cheek. It's a dream. While I was identifying my brother's body, it was early morning on a nondescript suburban street in the neighboring town. Misty O'Regan had just dropped off her daughter with her grandmother. She sits in her late model SUV and scrolls through her phone. There's a picture on one of her social media accounts of her standing outside the dream house, with Deacon's arm around her shoulder. You can see Shutter and Young, and Carla Hess. They're smiling. Misty doesn't even remember this day. It would have been in the first couple of weeks after learning about Deacon's dream house. She closes the app and rereads last night's text message. The contact is listed as Shutter, since when she created it, she didn't know how to spell Shutter's name, and she liked that better anyway. It suited him. The text just said, "Wakey, wakey." Misty smiled and watched Grandma's house fade in the rearview mirror. In the back, next to the car seat, she has her pink suitcase. Also, a recipient of Shutter's late text was Spencer Lockridge. Spencer had graduated with an associate's in English, having only met Dr. Voynich after reading his one and only book, recently pulled from shelves. The Growth? Blech. Spencer flattered the doctor with his interest, and thereby gained an invitation to the dream house one weekend. Spencer thought it would be a great experience for some theoretical novel sometime in the future. Instead, he spent an entire year in a drug-induced fog and writing precisely nothing. He's 24 years old with sandy blonde hair. He clung to an internship writing safety training material for line workers and is currently taking antidepressants. He had a child out of wedlock while still in high school but never married. He alternated weekend custody with the child's mother. Unfortunately, when he received Shutter's text, it was his weekend to watch over 5-year-old Meredith Rose. Rather than leaving his daughter with a babysitter, he simply shot her in her bed. While I was eating hash browns at the Trail Dust Diner, Carla Hess also received a text message, which she promptly deleted and went about her day. After a shower in my brother's bathroom, gross, I decided to head back into town to see what else I could find out. The sun was warm on my wet hair, and I spread my arms. Hello, LA. Roman's cat, Edwin, was on the stoop. It didn't look desperate, so I wasn't worried. It meowed at me like, "Hey, aren't you that bitch I tried to smother?" I look it in the eye and let it know, "Yeah, you're not getting rid of me that easy." Drove all day, wasted gas and didn't accomplish much. But I learned my way around town. Would be useful if I needed to follow somebody, lose somebody, or find a good burrito. Reconnaissance is half the job. On my way back to Romans, I swing into the sheriff's department to find out if they know anything. They don't. I might have cussed out the receptionist. I decided to stop by the post office to fill out a forwarding address slip. I'm not sure what time it is, but I'm sweating. After I park downtown, I step out of my car and I spot a mom and pop ice cream shop, and I check my phone as I gravitate toward it. I have messages from Brian and from Burr. Both want to know where I am and what I am doing. I start to type, "Chill the fuck out," when a shadow moves across the windshield of my Trans Am. I raise my head in time to get hit from the opposite direction. There's two of them. The first hit was to my stomach. Suddenly, I'm pinned against the driver's side door. Two men, average build, wearing gloves and masks. One presses his forearm into my chest to hold me. The other comes toward me with a pair of head shears. "Loner owed us big time, sweetheart." Pause. I want to clarify something real quick. In the subsequent police report written about this incident, the reporting officer wrote, "Garden shears." I understand this may seem trivial, but if you go down to your local hardware store and ask for garden shears, you will be presented with a small tool, 2 to 5 inches in length, intended for trimming flower stems, alternatively referred to as pruning scissors. Hedge shears, on the other hand, are between 9 and 30 inches in length, with sturdier blades, greater leverage, and designed to cut through dense, woody plants, or perhaps to remove human phalanges. This asshole was carrying hedge shears. Thank you. Moving on. I grab the restraining forearm with my opposite hand and pull it across our bodies. I redirect his body weight with the other hand, forcing him to fall forward. I slip past him in the other direction. His back is to me, and I push him as hard as I can. I don't weigh as much as he does, so it has little effect. That's why I'm a striker. I stomp into the back of his knee, and he stumbles. I strike either side of his head with both palms. Now Shears reaches for me, but he's not too aggressive. He acts like he wants to grab my arm, so I let him. Now that he has one hand on me and one hand on his weapon, I use my free hand to wrap his grabbing arm into a reverse figure 4 and dump him backwards. Jiu-jitsu, bitch. By now it's clear they're total amateurs. I kick the Shears out of reach as they regroup. I could run. Yeah, I could, but I don't. The forearm guy comes at me with a Frankenstein choke. As soon as he makes contact with my collarbone, I sweep one of his hands off of me and my other hand ox jaws into his Adam's apple. He makes a herking sound and starts to rethink his choices. But I'm not done. I trap the swept arm with my opposite hand and knife hand strike him in the brachial plexus. Wing Chun, motherfucker. Shears, now sans Shears, pushes Herc out of the way and I stick my anaconda up his nose. Constitutional carry. He stops. I circle away from the car, trying to stack them up and keep from getting cornered. Drop it! I swing the barrel and Deputy Burr has her sights on me. Are you kidding? I shout at her, turning back on the thugs. They're already moving away. I advance on them and Deputy Burr repeats, "Drop the weapon, nobody move." I hear sirens in the distance. I raise one hand and kneel down to place the revolver in front of me. Burr moves up behind and now gets picture on the thugs, but they're separating. "On the ground!" she shouts at all of us, her voice pitched and anxious. The masked men sprint in opposite directions. They are unarmed and they know if they split up, the cop will have to turn her back on someone. Freeze! Fuck! She kicks my gun over by the hedge shears and takes off on foot. She dashes about 6 yards before throwing up her hands in despair. She holsters her pistol and marches back to me like she's going to chop my head off. I wait there on my knees with my ankles crossed and fingers interlaced behind my head. She storms past me. "Get up, goddammit!" She talks into her radio. I can't make it out. The squad cars fly by us, searching the neighborhood. Good luck with that. About 3 hours later, they found one of the masks. In the meantime, Deputy Burr cranked cuffs on me and shoved me against my car. "I was looking for you. Where have you been?" "At your mom's house. It's none of your business." "They said you were at the station cussing out the receptionist." "Maybe. Now I have to file an incident report." "You'll live." "Who were those guys?" "How do I know? They had masks on." "Did they say anything?" "They said, 'Loner owes us.'" "So what does that mean?" "I have no idea. You're the one fucking him." "Well, you're his sister. That's why I'm the only one trying to catch his killer." "Fuck you. You're going to get yourself killed out here." "Fuck you more. I had it under control." "Oh yeah? What were you gonna do? Shoot him in the fucking parking lot?" "It was self-defense." "I'm so tired of your bullshit. I'm the one who has to save your ass." "You let them get away." "I told them to freeze." At this point, I can't suppress a laugh. She points at me, but turns away smiling. "God damn it!" She comes back and grabs my elbow to turn me. She presses me roughly against the car and snaps off the cuffs. "Freeze," I tease her. She pushes me and laughs. "You know that has never worked?" I'm so surprised. Deputy Dillon arrived with lights and sirens. He popped the curb and shuffle steered into the lot, making a wide U-turn to dynamically block me from pulling out of the parking space. He killed the siren, but kept the lights. His hand was on his holster as he came on scene. Jesus, I just wanted some ice cream. I take the day off to drive back home. I visit my apartment, except it doesn't feel like my apartment. I had moved into this 2-bed, 1-bath with Brian when I was 18, 19. We planned to buy a house, do the picket fence bullshit. We didn't. The small metal mailbox is overflowing, mostly junk with some divorce papers mixed in. He moved to Washington. I kept the apartment. Most of the furniture was his. Now the place looks like the Grinch who stole years of my life. I'm not mad. I played my part in it. I know I'm not staying here anymore. I grab some more clothes, some fresh towels and bed sheets, and clear out the fridge. To hell with the rest. It was dark by the time I made it back to Roman's. I stayed up most of the night not thinking about my failures in life, and also poking around on Roman's personal computer. If you thought his house was a clusterfuck, you should see his desktop. I clicked through hundreds of files, essays, poems, book ideas, blueprints, diagrams, research, and miscellaneous notes. He had endless files on plants, places, artists, philosophers, and just ordinary unknown people. Maybe one of them is the killer? Shit, I don't know. According to that logic, it was either Todd Dillman from Indianapolis who drives a gray Honda and likes Chinese food, or René Descartes. I hate computers. But I catch myself reading over one of his half-finished novels. It's full of spelling errors and perspective shifts. The main character is a fedora-wearing psychology professor named Norman Donner. What a dork. I had no idea at the time that I was reading a thinly veiled account of recent events. This is what I scanned, through half-closed eyes. Norman wiped the sweat from his brow and then reached down to his belt to index the gun and be sure it was out of sight but accessible. Norman never went to the police. That's his greatest sin in all of this. There are no excuses for him. He made his own methodical choices. Dr. Victor Meacham's behaviors threatened to expose not just both of them, but numerous others who had more or less knowingly participated in illegal and unethical experimentation and the distribution of illegal substances. Dr. Meacham took it to an extreme. He wanted to start a doomsday cult that worshipped a dream god called Perif Riel, of whom he claimed to be the prophet or avatar. Norman planned to offer Victor Meacham a resignation, to just walk away from the dream house, the university, everything. That was his compromise. He turned the door handle like a combination lock. Inside, Meacham's weathered office chair is turned away from him. Meacham's favorite lab coat is draped over the back of the chair. Norman focuses intently on the coat, but hears a quiet murmuring from the far side of the space. Barely 16-year-old Mackenzie Kinzer has been gagged and heaped over with old bones scavenged from the woods and highways. Norman moves towards her. He was torn in time between the chair and the girl, barely flinching as monkeys screeched at the fresh intrusion. This was worse than he imagined. It wasn't just neglect. It was an orchestrated horror. It wasn't even medieval. It was primeval, visceral, and perverse. He reached for his gun. To hell with the resignation. Norman spun the chair. There was only a maggot-filled dog carcass with a name tag and bifocals. Norman wasn't even disgusted at this point. He was just weary of the theatrics. It was almost too on the nose, too artful to be genuine. Meacham was playing at something. He was always saying in his lectures that art is threatening only in as much as it is an expression of a separate intelligence without a basis in shared morality. He was trying too hard to be something separate. Norman struggled with the ball gag in Mackenzie's mouth. He tries to unbuckle it one-handed, but it's tangled tightly with her long hair. Reluctantly, he laid his gun down to concentrate his fingers. "It's okay now, okay?" Victor must have been in the room already, waiting. Mackenzie saw him first but couldn't speak through her gag. "I knew you'd come." Meacham grabs Norman around the neck. "I've made so much progress." He was taller and denser than Norman, easily tossing him across the room. Norman said, "Fuck you," or "Eat shit," or something like that. "You think I don't know what you've done? What you're hiding? You're out of your mind." There was a struggle, but Meacham was the stronger of the two. "You're wrong about me." He seizes Norman with one hand and drives him against the wall. He is taller and likely unable to feel any pain. "I'll eat your dreams, Judas." Deidre reached the door to Meacham's room. The tall man lunges from the deep shadows. His knife flashes as it strikes Deidre's hand. She was running on pure adrenaline, so she barely registered the cut. But she knows it's bad. "Gah, you dick!" She cradles her hand to stop the bleeding. Meacham has Norman pinned against the wall. He has a syringe made of something symbolic, disguised so that you wouldn't immediately recognize it for what it was. He jammed it into Norman's thigh. "You want to know what God feels like?" Norman can't get free of Meacham's hold. "It'll make the pain go away." Norman screams as the injection starts to take effect. At this point, I can't take any more. Roman's novel reads like a trashy romance thriller. I love my brother, but enough with the melodrama. Sheesh.
Hello, listener. My name is Robert Napier. I just wanted to say thank you for your support. If you enjoy this content or have suggestions on how to improve on it, please leave a like or comment. It would mean a lot, and I'd really appreciate it. Consider subscribing so you never miss an episode. Thank you.